AITA for laughing when my runaway bride got dumped by her ex just 24 hours later. My name is Jason, and until very recently, I was engaged to Brooke. We had been together for 5 years, and until just a few days ago, I thought I knew her pretty well. We met while we were students at the state university, and our relationship built up very naturally. First casual dates, then we made it official, then we moved into an apartment together, and finally we decided to get married. For a long time, I believed our relationship was solid. Not perfect, obviously, but stable. We had our arguments like any couple, mostly about everyday issues, money, schedules, household chores. Nothing out of the ordinary. That is exactly why what happened on our wedding day caught me completely off guard. The story really begins the day before the ceremony. It was late afternoon. We were in the apartment sorting out the final details. The ceremony was supposed to take place the following afternoon. So that day, we were basically checking confirmations, the venue, the music, the transportation for some family members flying in from out of town. Brooke was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand while I was going over a to-do list on the dining room table. I remember the mood being quite calm. You could even say relaxed, considering how close the event was. At one point, I heard her let out a little laugh. Not a full belly laugh, more like a brief chuckle, like when something seems ridiculous to you. I asked her what was going on. She held up her phone and replied in a surprised tone. "Look who wrote to me." I walked over and saw the screen. It was a Facebook message. The sender's name was Kyle. I knew perfectly well who Kyle was. He had been her ex before we started dating. From what Brooke had told me, they had a pretty bad breakup and had no contact for years. It was not a topic that came up often in our relationship. In fact, in 5 years, I think his name had only been mentioned very rarely in our conversations. That is why it surprised me a bit to see him pop up there. And Brooke turned the screen toward me so I could read the message. It said this: "I know you are getting married tomorrow. I just wanted you to know that I could never forget you. If you ever need anything, I will always be here for you." I remember reading it twice because the wording seemed particularly dramatic to me. Before I could even say anything, Brooke let out another little laugh and shook her head. "Honestly, this guy is pathetic," she said. "And who sends something like that right before a wedding?" Her tone seemed neither angry nor worried. On the contrary, she gave the impression of finding it completely ridiculous. I asked her if she was going to reply. "Of course not," she answered immediately. I did not even know he still had me as a friend. After that, she tapped a few things on her phone and put it down on the table. The conversation ended there. At the time, I did not give the incident too much importance. I figured it was just the kind of ex who resurfaces when he finds out his former girlfriend is about to get married. It was awkward, but not really unusual. The evening went on normally. We grabbed some takeout because neither of us was very hungry. Later, we started packing the things we needed to bring to the venue the next day. There were boxes with small decorations, some favors for the guests, and other things the coordinator had asked us to bring early. I remember that before going to sleep, she seemed a bit nervous, but I chalked it up to normal pre-wedding stress. Besides, I was the one who told her something like, "It is normal for you to be stressed. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." She replied with a small smile. "Yes, I think it is just nerves." We went to bed relatively early because we had to get up bright and early the next day. The morning of the wedding started around 7 o'clock. I woke up first and went to the kitchen to make coffee. While I was pouring the cups, I heard Brooke get up too. She walked into the kitchen with her phone in her hand and an annoyed expression. "That idiot Kyle wrote to me again," she blurted out almost immediately. The way she said it made me think the subject was really starting to irritate her. I asked her what happened. "He sent me another message a few minutes ago," she replied. "I do not know if he thinks I am going to cancel the wedding or something like that." This time, she did not show me the message, but she seemed genuinely upset. "Did you answer him?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, I blocked him. He is exhausting me." Then she put the phone on the table and picked up her coffee cup. The topic ended there once again. The rest of the morning was pretty chaotic, as is often the case on a wedding day. Family members arrived early. The wedding planner started calling multiple times to confirm the schedule, and the makeup artist arrived earlier than expected. Brooke had to leave with her friends and her sister to head to the venue a few hours before me to get ready. Before leaving, she gave me a quick hug. "See you there," she said. Nothing in her attitude seemed strange at that moment. If anything, She seemed even calmer than the night before. I arrived at the venue about 2 hours later. It was a large place with a garden and a covered pavilion where the ceremony would take place. When I arrived, several guests were already waiting at the reception. I greeted some family members and friends while the staff finished setting up the last details. My best man, who was going to stand up with me, stayed by my side the whole time to help me sort out the little details. As the time of the ceremony approached, the guests began to take their seats. I remember feeling nervous, but also very excited at that exact moment. It was that typical mix of anxiety and happiness that many people describe before getting married. The music started playing. The wedding planner signaled to me that it was time to go to the front. I was standing there waiting when I noticed some movement near the entrance of the hall. One of Brooke's friends quickly walked out toward the area where the organizers were. She seemed to be saying something urgently. A few seconds later, another one of her friends walked out as well. At first, I thought it was something related to the dress or makeup, normal mishaps that can happen before walking down the aisle. But then the planner walked up to me with a somewhat tense expression. "We need a few minutes," he told me in a low voice. I asked him what was going on. "It seems the bride is feeling a little unwell," he replied. "Nothing serious, probably just stress." I looked toward the preparation area, but from where I was standing, I could not see much. A few minutes passed. The guests started whispering among themselves. The music kept playing in the background while the staff tried to keep the situation under control. Finally, I saw Brooke come out. She was not walking down the aisle as planned. She was moving forward, supported by two of her friends and her sister. They were helping her walk slowly. When I saw her up close, I noticed she was crying. These were not discreet tears. She was openly crying in front of everyone. The people sitting nearby started looking at each other in confusion. I took a step forward. "What is going on?" I asked. Brooke stopped a few feet away from me. Her makeup was slightly smudged from the tears. She was breathing fast, as if trying to calm down. Her friends were trying to whisper things to her, probably to reassure her. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The silence in the room became heavy. Finally, Brooke spoke up. Her voice was trembling. "I cannot do this." I felt like someone had muted all the sound around us. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She looked down, then looked back up. "I do not want to get married." An immediate murmur rippled through the guests. I remember feeling a very strange sensation in the pit of my stomach, as if the ground was slightly shifting beneath my feet. Before I could react, we heard something from outside. A car horn was blaring nonstop in the street outside the venue. Several people turned toward the entrance. Brooke also looked in that direction, and that is when she said something no one in that room expected to hear. With a voice still trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear, she said, "We all have that one ex who, if he talks to us, we would leave with him without thinking twice. So I am sorry." There was absolute silence. Before anyone could react, Brooke slightly lifted her wedding dress with both hands and ran away toward the street in front of everyone. I clearly remember several people continuing to stare at the door she had just run through, hoping she would come back or that someone would explain what had just happened, but no one knew what to say. The silence was heavy. I stood right where I was, my eyes fixed on the entrance. I did not run after her. I did not yell. I did not try to hold her back. A lot of people asked me later why I did not do anything. The answer is simple. At that precise moment, I did not feel anything clearly. I was not angry. I was not crying. I had no desire to run. The only thing I remember is a very strange feeling of emptiness. As if suddenly everything that had happened over the months, the wedding prep, the expectations, the stress, had vanished all at once, and my mind simply did not know how to react anymore. Some people started getting up from their seats. Others stayed still, watching the scene. Brooke's friends were completely pale. One of them ran outside toward the street, probably to follow her, but she did not come back right away. The wedding planner was talking with the venue staff to try and figure out what to do. And then I heard someone crying. It was Brooke's mother. She was sitting in the front row, both hands covering her face. She was crying in a way that did not just seem like shame or embarrassment. It sounded more like a mix of despair and humiliation. Several of her family members were trying to comfort her. Brooke's father, on the other hand, remained completely motionless. I remember making eye contact with him. His expression was very similar to mine. He was not yelling. He was not demanding anything. He just looked empty, as if he also did not know how to process what had just occurred. My best man walked up to me and put a hand on my shoulder. "Jason," he said in a low voice. He did not finish his sentence. It was not necessary. After a few minutes, the planner approached us. He explained that it would be best to cancel everything. It was obvious the ceremony was not going to continue. Some guests began to leave slowly. Others came up to me to say things like, "I am so sorry," or "You did not deserve this." I just nodded. I did not have the energy to talk. My family tried to take care of some practical details. There were vendors to cancel, decisions to make in the midst of the chaos. One of the few things we managed to stop in time was the DJ. The planner was able to call him before he arrived at the venue, which saved some of the costs. But many other things were already paid for or could not be canceled on the spot. The venue, the catering, the decorations, the photographer. At the end of the day, there were significant financial losses, even though at the time, honestly, money was the least of my worries. The hours that followed were strange. The place that a few hours earlier was filled with music and anticipation was now almost empty. Only a few relatives and the staff taking down the decorations remained. My mother insisted that we go home. My father was talking with the venue manager to sort out some details. As for me, I spent most of the time sitting on a chair near the garden, staring blankly into space. I did not cry. I do not know why. Maybe I was too confused for that. That night, I went back alone to the apartment I had shared with Brooke. The silence in that place felt bizarre. There were still a few wedding-related things around, boxes with favors for the guests, bags of decorations, some leftover flowers we had brought. I sat on the couch and put my phone on the table. I did not check social media. I did not want to read messages. I just sat there. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. I do not know exactly what time it was when the phone rang. It was in the middle of the night. The number displayed on the screen was not saved in my contacts. For a moment, I thought about not answering, but something pushed me to take the call. "Hello." There were a few seconds of silence. Then I heard Brooke's voice. "Jason." Her voice sounded different. She was not crying, but she sounded tense. "What do you want?" I asked. There was a small pause before she spoke again. "I am so sorry for what I did." I did not reply. She kept talking quickly, as if she was afraid I would hang up. "But I need you to help me." I frowned. "Help you?" "I am at the police station." That sentence caught me completely off guard. "What?" "I was arrested." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "What are you talking about?" Brooke took a deep breath before explaining. "Kyle wanted to flee the country." I felt a small knot form in my stomach hearing that name again. "That is why he contacted me," she continued. "He wanted me to leave with him." As she spoke, her voice became increasingly desperate. "But they arrested him, and when they checked everything, they found out a lot of things." I did not understand what she was referring to. "What things?" "Crimes," she finally said. "Corporate thefts, fraud, several things." I stayed silent. "They sent him straight to jail?" she added. "But now they are saying I am his accomplice." That sentence made me close my eyes for a second. "Come on, Jason," she blurted out quickly. "You know very well I am not his accomplice." Her tone was now clearly pleading. "I need you to help me get out of here." I did not answer right away. My mind was trying to process too much information at once. Barely a few hours ago, she had run away from our wedding saying she was leaving with her ex. And now, she was calling me from a police station to tell me she had been arrested because that same ex was a wanted criminal. "Jason," she insisted. "Please. What do you want me to do?" I finally asked. "Talk to someone, a lawyer. Tell them I was with you. That you knew I had nothing to do with this." That was the moment I felt something different from the emptiness. It was not exactly anger, more like a cold clarity. "Leave me alone," I told her. There was silence on the other end of the line. "Jason." I did not let her finish. I hung up, turned off the phone, and put it on the table. I did not manage to fall back asleep that night. The next morning, I got another surprise. I was called in to give a statement. Apparently, during her interrogation, Brooke had stated that I knew everything, that I was aware of the situation, that I even knew about Kyle's legal troubles. Obviously, all of this was completely false. I had never had the slightest contact with that man. I did not even know what he did for a living. But now my name was dragged into this whole mess, so I had to go to the police station to give my statement. I will not go into too much legal detail because there are still ongoing matters. I will just say it was a surreal experience. Less than 24 hours ago, I was waiting to get married, and now I was sitting in a room answering questions about a guy accused of fraud and theft, and about the woman I had been engaged to who apparently had tried to run away with him. I still do not know exactly how all this is going to end. I am waiting for the authorities to finish reviewing the information. As soon as I have clear news, I will update the situation because honestly, I still cannot understand how my wedding turned into this in less than a day. Update. 3 weeks have passed since I posted what happened on my wedding day. Several people wrote to me asking what happened next because when I finished my original post, everything was still ongoing. Now, the situation has been resolved legally, at least for the most part. So I can finally tell how it all ended. I will try to explain it clearly because even for me at first, it was hard to understand. When I went to give my statement at the police station that day, the authorities had already been investigating Qley for quite some time. From what was explained to me later, he had long been involved in several financial frauds and thefts related to small businesses. It was not something improvised. A full investigation had been open for months. The reason they arrested him on that specific day is because he tried to leave the country. Apparently, he had an escape plan, and that is why he had contacted Brooke. At first, when she called me from the police station saying she knew nothing about his crimes, I had no way of knowing if she was telling the truth or not. But as the days went by, the police started looking into their phones, their messages, and their records. And that is when everything started to become clear. It turned out that the story she had told me about Qley suddenly reappearing the day before the wedding was not true at all. They had been exchanging messages for weeks. The conversations were recovered from the saved messages on their accounts and on Qley's phone. When the case went under judicial review, these records were presented as evidence. I actually got to see some of these messages myself because the prosecutor showed me parts of them during my extended statement. I am not going to repeat everything because there were a lot of them, but the pattern was very clear. Qley had started contacting her several weeks prior with the classic nostalgic speech. He recalled their past relationship, said he had never been able to forget her, that kind of thing. In the beginning, Brooke replied in a pretty neutral way. In the first few messages, she even seemed to brush him off or treat it as an awkward conversation. That is what her lawyer later tried to use to defend her, that she seemed innocent at first. But as the days passed, the tone changed. Qley started talking about money. He said he had made a lot of money with his business and that he was planning to leave the country. He mentioned multiple times that he had enough cash to start a new life elsewhere. According to the messages, the destination he brought up was New Zealand. I do not know why he chose that country in particular, but he mentioned it often. The conversation became increasingly fantastical. He talked about starting over from scratch, disappearing, leaving everything behind. And at some point, Brooke started playing along. The messages showed that she had begun imagining this story with him. He talked about what it would be like to arrive in another country, change their lives, escape. It was obvious he had built some sort of romantic narrative around all this, as if he were living in a movie. The weirdest part is that in many of the messages, Brooke kept a certain tone of doubt, as if a part of her knew that the whole thing was absurd or dangerous. That is something her defense tried to use later, arguing that Qley emotionally manipulated her. But there was a problem. A single message completely changed the interpretation of the case. It was an audio message. This audio had been sent on the very day of the wedding. They recovered it from Qley's phone, and it was the piece of evidence that destroyed any attempt at a defense. Brooke's voice could be heard clearly. She did not sound nervous or confused. She sounded excited. The recording was short, but very clear. She said she could not wait to see him that afternoon, that she knew this involved a risky choice with questionable funds, and that she was drawn to the excitement of their secret plan. When I heard that audio for the first time, I felt something weird. It was not sadness, more like a feeling of disconnection, as if the person speaking in that recording was not the one I had lived with for 5 years. This message made two things obvious. First, that she knew perfectly well that Qley's money came from illegal activities. Second, that she was not merely aware of it, she found it exciting. That completely changed the court's stance. During the trial, she tried to defend herself by saying that it was all just a fantasy, that she never thought Qley was really involved in serious crimes, but the audio directly contradicted that version. The key phrases about the funds and the excitement were quoted multiple times during the hearing. From that moment on, the case became pretty straightforward. Qley was already facing multiple charges for corporate fraud and theft. Authorities had financial records, suspicious transfers, and complaints from several companies. His conviction was practically inevitable. The court eventually sentenced him to 25 years in prison. For Brooke, the situation was different. She was not accused of committing the frauds directly, but rather of complicity. The evidence showed that she knew the origin of the money and that she still planned to flee with him using his resources. Furthermore, the conversations proved that she was involved in the plan to leave the country. That is why the court determined she bore criminal responsibility. The final sentence was 5 years in prison for complicity. During the trial, she tried to implicate me. Her lawyer argued that I knew about the conversations or that I at least had suspicions, but there was no evidence to back that up. There had never been any messages between Kyle and me. There was no record indicating I was aware of anything. Even the exchanges between them showed that Brooke was hiding everything. For the authorities, it became clear that I had no connection to what they were plotting. So, I was ultimately completely cleared from the case. Legally speaking, my situation is closed. The only thing I had to do was testify. Nothing more. On a personal level, these weeks have been strange. A lot of friends ask me if I am devastated or if I feel betrayed. The truth is more complicated. During the first few days, I mostly felt in shock. Then came a sort of weird calm. I think when something is so absurd, the mind fails to process it normally. Sometimes I still think back to that moment during the ceremony when she said that sentence and ran away. But now, knowing everything that was going on behind the scene makes more sense. It was not a spur-of-the-moment impulse. It was not a nervous breakdown. It was the culmination of something that had been brewing for weeks. She had already made her decision long before that day. She just picked the worst possible moment to execute it. People often say I was lucky that everything happened before the wedding, and they are probably right. If it had happened a few months later, the disaster would have been much bigger. So I guess that is the only silver lining in this whole story. My life started over from scratch 3 weeks ago, but at least now, I know exactly who I was about to marry. And considering everything that came to light afterward, I think I dodged something far worse than I imagined that day. Comment. I wanted to drop this quick note because stories like this always make me reflect on what really matters in life. What stands out to me is how much self-respect matters in every relationship we build. You have every right to set clear boundaries and expect them to be honored by the person you love. Being kind doesn't mean ignoring red flags or putting yourself last all the time. Healing takes time, and that's perfectly normal after something shakes your world. I've learned that choosing peace over chaos is one of the best decisions we can make for ourselves. Taking responsibility for your own happiness is something worth practicing every single day. Trust your instincts when something feels off, even if it's hard in the moment. You deserve a love that feels steady and safe, not filled with uncertainty. If you're navigating something difficult right now, know that better days are ahead, and you're not alone. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.